So I'd say that I've been using the Lumix S5 II pretty much exclusively since January, and of course that's given me some time to experiment with different configurations and different accessories that are available on the market for this camera. And it's actually quite funny because my whole mentality on shooting has completely changed in the last 3 months, and I'm actually using a lot more of a minimalist setup with this camera compared to what I was using with the Lumix S1 and the S5. So today I just want to talk about, you know, the different accessories that I love to use with the S5 II and the ones that I think suit my shooting applications the most, and of course maybe the ones that will probably suit your shooting applications too. I'll leave links to everything that I speak about in the description of this video. One of the biggest driving factors for me recently has definitely been saving on weight, because I'm sure, like quite a lot of you guys, I do a lot of traveling for work. So that means that I'm sometimes trying to shoot locations, I'm on planes, I'm on trains and all that sort of stuff. And I just found that after quite some time of, you know, accumulating gear, I was just bringing too much stuff to the shoots that I just didn't really need to get the shot. So with the S5 II, I've definitely tried to keep things a bit more stripped back, and that definitely sort of shows in the sort of setup that I'm using with this camera. So let's just start off with cages, because I'm sure that anyone that shoots video will want to run out and get a cage for this camera if they haven't already done so. And I've been very fortunate to try and test a few different cages that are available for this camera, but I think I found one that's absolutely perfect for my shooting needs. So just as a few honorable mentions, I have tried out the Smallrig cage, and I think it's very good. It's robust, it's very well built, like all Smallrig accessories are. And I also tried out the cage that's available for this camera from Siri, which is the anamorphic lens brand. But there's one glaring issue with that cage in my opinion, and that's the sort of red tab on the side that you can use to thread a strap through. But essentially that red tab sticks out from the side of the camera so much so that it actually digs into the side of your hand when you're holding the camera. So ergonomically it's just not very nice to use, and ultimately that's why I probably wouldn't recommend getting that one. But the actual cages that I use with this camera are from Tilta. I think that Tilta make the best cages available for the S5 II, and the one that I'm actually using for this camera is the half cage. Now I do actually own both the half and the full cage from Tilta for this camera, but to be honest I'll probably put the full cage on the S5 IIX when I eventually get that when it comes out. But for this setup I find the half cage to be more than adequate for what I need. I mean, it sort of leaves the side of the camera feeling a bit more, you know, sort of naked feeling for when you're holding it, which is nice for hybrid shooters, so it means that the cage doesn't feel awkward and heavy and weird to hold when you are hand holding this camera, but still gives you all the mounting options that you need. So it's got the culture on the top as well as a few mounting holes, and then on the left side of the camera you have all of those screw-in points as well. So yeah, it's really useful. It does do a good job at protecting your camera, and it also helps to keep weight down, which of course is my best friend at the moment. And then of course, normally when building a rig for a camera, people would opt to use a monitor, but you'd probably be surprised to know that I don't actually use a monitor with the S5 II. And of course with the S1 and the S5 I use the Atomos Ninja V. That was my monitor of choice, but I actually normally, you know, run this camera without any sort of monitoring system, which is actually saving a lot of weight and a lot of sort of setup time and battery swaps and stuff. But to be honest, I just found that the autofocus with this camera is so reliable now that, let's say for example I was on a paid shoot, I can, you know, let the camera acquire focus for me and then just switch the camera to manual focus if need be, or for product shots and all that sort of stuff, then I can just use continuous autofocus and it just works really well and really nicely. One thing that I have kept with this setup however is a good filter system, and that means that I still do use a matte box for this camera, but it's a much smaller, more compact version of what I was using beforehand. So with the S1 rig I was using a matte box system from Smallrig, which is great and works really well for that setup, but I wanted something that was a bit more smaller, compact, that still had all the same great features and build quality. So I opted for the Tilta Mirage matte box sort of system, and still allows me to use both circular filters and the cine size Panavision size filters too. So that's really great, and it's a lot smaller in terms of footprint compared to the Smallrig matte box that I was using with the S1. And then the other filter system that I use is actually the 100mm filter holder from Formatt Hitech, which essentially enables you to use 100mm square filters with sort of any size lens once you get it screwed on. And the great thing about this filter system is that it's very, very compact, and the sort of footprint's really small, which is of course very good for me. And it means that, you know, you can use some high quality filters with your lenses, because ultimately I've sort of gone off circular filters and the screw-on filters, to be honest. I just found that the quality sometimes is, you know, not really there, sometimes a little bit hit and miss, whereas the 100mm square filters that I use from Formatt are great because the quality is extremely good, and it also means that I can, you know, put them all in this really neat sort of carrying pouch and know that whenever I chuck my filter kit into my bag, I have every single filter in there without, you know, worrying about missing my CPL or an ND, for example. So yeah, those are the two filter systems that I'm using. They're both super high quality and suit the sort of lightweight nature of the setup to the ground. So in keeping with the whole theme of stripping things back and saving on weight, I actually went out and bought an entirely new gimbal for this camera too. And I already own like 3 or 4 gimbals, so really I didn't need one. But again, I'm trying to save as much weight as possible, and my whole mentality has shifted, you know, towards that sort of minimalist way. So when you think about it, it's actually not minimalist at all to have 4 gimbals. And the RS3 Mini is absolutely fantastic for this setup because it has a max payload of 2 kilograms, which is ample for the setups and configurations that I'm using with the Lumix S5 II. So of course the body itself is really small, compact and lightweight. The half cage saves on weight as well, and then the lenses themselves also don't weigh too much. So all of the S series primes that I've become, you know, very accustomed to using, they're all, you know, sort of sub 600 grams. And then a Sigma 2870 f2.8 as well is also very lightweight. So it means that I'm never really encroaching on that weight limit with that gimbal. And again, it just helps to keep the whole setup really nice and compact whilst, you know, saving weight, which again is really important for me. Of course, that's not to say that I still don't use those bigger setups when I need it, like with the S5 and the S1, for example. And if you're interested in hearing about the other accessories that I use to better my shooting sort of experience with these cameras, then you should definitely check out my whole video on the S1 rig that I made, and it's still the rig that I use for the shoots where I need that sort of setup.